Bruna hated children and she hated her own daycare center. But she had no other way of making a decent income. She especially hated the little boys. Brandon was the most adorable little boy that came to the center, and he was such a sweet, trouble-free child. He didn't cry and he didn't ask a lot of questions like most of the children. His mother, Patricia, would send him to the center with a big red apple for his snack, and he would sit and nibble on the apple for almost an hour. He loved to draw and to color, and his mother always sent him in with his favorite green pencil and a drawing pad. Bruna's husband died and left her with a lot of bills. He had no life insurance and a ton of debts. Bruna wanted out of this lifestyle that she was forced into, and she wanted out quickly. Bruna loved to gamble, and most weekends she would go to the casino and try to win some money. Whenever she lost big, she would get up early Monday morning to greet the parents and the children with great contempt in her heart. She looked at some of the women trying so hard to hold down their jobs and still get their children off safely in the mornings, and she thought to herself that they were crazy for having children. Bruna had no children, and she was actually bitter about that fact. She tried several times, but she couldn't seem to ever conceive, and she finally accepted her fate and gave up. After that, she began to despise children, but she put up a great front when the parents would drop off the kids. "Oh, hi, little ball of sunshine," she would say as each child came in, but once the parents left, she would shout and scream angrily at the children. Bruna had 6 children that came Monday through Friday, and she had 2 foster children in her care. The 2 were autistic, and they were a lot of work, but the checks for the 2 of them helped keep Bruna afloat. Every morning, starting around 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. in the evening, Bruna would have to run around the home, keeping an eye on the children and making sure that they were clean and fed. The 2 autistic children got on the school bus in the morning and came back each afternoon. By the time Friday night rolled around, Bruna was exhausted. She kept telling herself that she would have to find a way out soon or she would lose her mind. The 2 autistic children that lived with her were manageable, so she made sure that they were in bed early on Fridays so that she could relax for most of the weekend in between casino visits. Bruna would let her neighbor watch the kids while she ran out and got her groceries and her scratch-off cards. She hated having to pay her neighbor to watch the kids, even for an hour, but she didn't want to take a chance of something happening to them. She would hurriedly get home and unload her groceries and be glad when she could finally sit down and check and see if she won anything when she scratched off her cards. Bruna couldn't legally get any more children so that she could get more money, and she really couldn't handle having any more anyway. By the time she cooked, cleaned, changed diapers, and did nap time, she was already exhausted. Bruna knew that she couldn't keep this pace up much longer. She knew that the lottery in New York was especially high this week. They just kept announcing on the TV that it was a record high and that nobody won so far. It was driving Bruna crazy, and she just kept imagining what she would do if she could just win it. She imagined herself on an island in the Bahamas drinking a margarita. She thought, if only I could win. The week was coming to an end, and Bruna was watching every day to see if anyone won the lottery. It just kept getting bigger and bigger, and Bruna began to imagine that fate was on her side. She just had this burning feeling deep inside of her that she was going to win. The children interrupted her train of thought when one of the children fell down and cut her lip. Bruna screamed at them all, and she took the child roughly and doctored up her lip. Soon the crying stopped, and Bruna looked and saw little Brandon just sitting calmly at the table drawing with his little pencil. He observed everything, and he would only stop what he was doing if he had to go to the potty or if he had to tell Bruna that something happened. She gave him a scornful look and went back to her newspaper. Friday was finally here, and still no one won the big prize. Bruna could barely contain herself, but she just knew that fate was going to make her the big winner. Just about 6 p.m., Bruna couldn't hold on any longer. She felt that something was telling her to go and get her ticket right away, or it would be too late. She still had an hour before the parents came to get the kids, but her mind became obsessed with the idea that she had to have that ticket right now. She corralled all of the children into the living room and told them, "Don't any of you leave this room for anything until I get back." She took Brandon by the hand and showed him how to unlock and lock the front door. She instructed him to lock it behind her, and she jumped into her car and zoomed down the road. When she got to the store, she couldn't believe her eyes. The line was out the door. She wanted to turn around and go back home, but she kept telling herself that it would go quickly. She waited and waited as the line slowly moved. She grumbled and complained and kept looking angrily at the man at the counter as he slowly put in each number. There was no one else in the store that night, and the cashier had to handle the customers that were buying goods as well as the people wanting lottery tickets. Bruna was sweating and squeezing her fists tightly until she finally got to the register. It seemed that the cashier purposely took the next customer that wanted to pay for a loaf of bread, and then he came back to take Bruna's numbers. Bruna snatched her tickets and handed the man the money and raced out of the store. She couldn't believe it when she looked at her watch. It was already 7:10 p.m. Bruna got to her block and there were fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances up and down the street. She weaved around the trucks and jumped out of the car shouting, "What's going on?" One of the parents ran over to Bruna and smacked her in the face. "How could you leave our babies alone?" she shouted. The NYPD officers walked over to Bruna and placed her under arrest. Apparently, Bruna left the stove on and one of the autistic children knocked over a pan of grease, and it caught fire. Little Brandon led the children out of the front door when he saw the flames and the smoke, but one child got left behind and perished. Bruna faced several criminal charges, and her lawyer told her that she could be looking at fines, jail time, and lawsuits. When she got out on bail, Bruna had to rent a room at a friend's house where she wouldn't be recognized because she was receiving so many death threats. When she finally had time to sit down, she checked her tickets, and she couldn't believe her eyes when she had the winning ticket. Bruna had won the lottery. Though New York didn't want to pay Bruna, they had to because she won fair and square, but in the coming years she would be lucky if she got to spend a dime of the money since she was being sued for millions and her lawyer was costing a fortune. Bruna sat sometimes and wondered if she had it to do all over again. Would she have gone out for that ticket?